Today's daf yomi is Sanhedrin Pei, Sanhedrin 85. Today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim. Excuse me, Hatzal for the Shvuyim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael on this Eis Tzara. Ba'al Minei Rav Sheishes. So we're going to start on 2 lines from the top on 85a. They asked the following question of Rav Sheishes. Ben Mao Sheyas Shliach Ha'aviv La'koso L'Kolo. They said, can a son, we know that a son is not allowed to hit their father and the mother, but what if the court what if he works for the court and the court wants to appoint him to strike his father and to curse his father? Either, what does curse mean? Either Rashi says it's excommunicating, or else it could mean that when they punish the person with lashes, the Bezdin reads out curses. So is he allowed to do that? Amalei Rav Shesha said, well, anyways, it's the prohibition for anybody. How's anybody allowed to do this? So we do it for the honor of God. If we do it for the honor of God. The Gemara challenges Rav Shesha, may say from a brisa. The brisa is opaque. So the brisa reads, "Uma mishim mitzuva la'akoso, mitzuva shelo la'akoso." So somebody who is commanded to hit him, to strike somebody, is also commanded sometimes not to strike somebody, meaning to say, presumably someone who's commanded to give lashes is also commanded sometimes not to exceed the lashes. So we have a kavachomer, misha eno mitzuvako. So somebody who's not allowed to command is not allowed to strike him. Somebody who's commanded not to strike him. Eno din shemitzuva shaloko. So for sure he's commanded not to strike him. So what's this price referring to? My love, idi v'idi b'makom mitzvah. Aren't we talking about both cases where you're being an agent of the court? And haba b'no, haba achar. And the first one is by somebody else, and the second one is the son. And so we see that the son is commanded not to strike him. And so it means against Rav Sheshes. So the Gemara says, no, no, both cases don't refer, it can apply either to the son or to somebody else. No, it's talking about one is where you're commanded as a mitzvah, as the agent of the court, and one is where you're not an agent of the court. And this is how you read the brisa. Just like where you're an agent of the court. Where you're commanded to strike him mitzvah shalolako, so you're not allowed to go over, or you're not allowed to give him extra. Shalobamakom mitzvah, where you're not an agent to the court. Shena mitzvah koso, where you're not commanded to strike him. Eno din shemitzvah shalolako. So for sure, it's the case that you're not allowed to strike anybody unless it's a case that you're an agent of the court. The Boker Tov Habs, there's a Gemara, there's a new Gemara. So the Gemara says, right there. So the Gemara says, Tashma, we're on 85a, halfway down. Ayotze, also your tzitzis should be arriving today. I'll let you know when they come. Tashma, Ayotze lihare guba. The question we're discussing on 85a, Hobbs, is, let's say a son is an agent of the court to give lashes. Is he allowed to administer him to his father? His father is found guilty and is liable for lashes. Is the son allowed to give it? So the Gemara says, Tashma, Yotze lehareg. So we have a brisa, someone who's being brought out to be executed. Uba beno v'iko, and the son comes along and strikes him, the kilo, or curses him, chayev. His son is going to be liable. Ba'achar v'iko, somebody else strikes him and kills him, v'kilo pater. Somebody else strikes him or kills him or curses him, he's going to be exempt. So v'avinaban, we said about the brisa, ma'ishna beno ma'ishna achar. Why is the son liable on this and the other person exempt? We're talking about a case, but Mistavrim Boates, the Kim to the Brisa, where the person who was found guilty is refusing to leave. And so therefore we're going to say the son is still liable. So there's the question of Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says that if the son is the agent of the court, he can strike the person. And here we're saying that he can't. So this is the question against Rav Sheshes. So Rav Sheshes, Mukila, Rav Sheshes would say that the Brisa is referring to Mishaim is Sarim Moatzeit. No, the person is not giving problems. He's not refusing to go out, and so therefore the son has no right to attack him, and that's why he's liable. So the Gemara says, "Well, nami." Well, if that's the case, why is then if another person strikes the man, why is he exempt? The Gemara says, "Achar gavra katilu." So he says, no, another person, he's striking, he's hitting a dead man. And so therefore he's going to be exempt because you're not liable for hitting a dead man. So the Gemara says, really? V'amar Rav Sheshes, Rav Sheshes himself said, Bisho Yashem. Let's say you embarrass a guy who's sleeping. How do you embarrass him? I don't know. You put a sign that says, kick me here on him. So you make umes. And then he dies. Chayiv, you have to pay the heirs. So we see from here that even though the person is dead, you have to pay the heirs. So too in that case, you should have to pay the heirs. So the Gemara says, okay, different in Kimta. What we're talking about here is Bishiko, Hakash, Ein Bashava Pruta. You struck him in a manner where it's not worth any amount of money, and so therefore they're exempt from having to pay. Rabbi Ami, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, he still get lashes. What do you mean he's exempt? He still gets lashes. He says, no, what does exempt mean? My pater de kamar, pater mi mamun. You're exempt from having to pay money. So it means to say, Mikal de beno chayeb mamun. What do you mean the son's liable to pay money? It's not talking about the son liable to pay money. It means he's liable to be punished. Bedino, hachinam bedino. So also by somebody else, it's not talking about money. So the Gemara says, okay, what's the reason why somebody else is going to be exempt? What's the reason why somebody else? So, what's the reason why somebody else is pater? Because the pasuk says, the pasuk says you're not allowed to curse. You're not allowed to curse the prince amongst your people. And it's not really a curse against only a Nazi. The Gemara earlier discussed that it was a curse. You're not allowed to curse anybody. It means to say, say amcha. That's only where he does the actions of your people. But where he doesn't do the actions of your people, you're allowed to curse him. And so therefore the other person is exempt for cursing him. Gemara says, well, fine, you're allowed to curse him if he's wicked, but how do you know you're allowed to hit him? No, we make a hackish between cursing and hitting, because just like we make a comparison between them. Rashi says, we learn it out from a mematzino. Alternatively, Rashi says it's a hekesh because Maka Aviv and Maka Umikalo Aviv are written next to each other in Mishpatim, and there's only one verse in between them, so we compare them. Rashi gives two explanations. Well, if that's the case, Yachi beno nami. So if that's the case, the son should also be allowed to curse and strike his father. The Gemara says no, he can't. Why? No, the case of the son is the father repented, so the son can't strike him. Well, if that's the case, Yachi achar nami. Well, if he repented, then the other person shouldn't be allowed to. So I'm a Rav Murray. So Rav Murray says, when do we say that you're not allowed to curse the person? But amcha, the mekuyim sheba amcha, somebody who will be around. He's not sentenced to death. And this one who is sentenced to death, since he's not mekuyim, you're allowed to strike him and curse him because he's a dead man. Well, if that's the case, the son also should be allowed to strike their father and curse their father. So the Gemara's answer on the top of 85b is Midi Dahavi La'achar Misa. No, since we're going to learn later on that you're not allowed to curse your father after he dies, like the next mission will say, that the prohibition of cursing applies even after the father's death. And so therefore the prohibition against cursing remains after the cursing, after the death. And so just like you're liable for cursing after the death, so too you're liable for striking. So you're liable for striking. We'll read the Rashi. We're going to learn later on that cursing after the death is liable. And if you're going to ask that if you strike after death, you're exempt. And here the son is liable for striking. The Ketani called the call. Hainu time of the pater So what's the reason why if he strikes his father after death, he's exempt? It's only a technical reason. We require a wound. And after death, you can't make a chabura because he's not alive. But while he's being brought out to be executed, ika chabura. You can make a wound because he's still alive. So therefore, yes, if you strike one's father after death, you're going to be exempt. But if you strike him while he's on his way to die, then you're going to be liable. Then the son is going to be liable. So Amar Baravuna v'chein debei. So therefore, Rav Sheshes was able to explain why the son was liable in this case. So Rav Sheshes says that the son is allowed, generally speaking, to strike their father if they're an agent of the court. But the Gemara says Amar Baravuna v'chein tani very small. We'll call. So he says the following: and for all the laws of the Torah, so even Rav Sheshes says the son can be an agent to strike his father, we say the son cannot to strike him and to curse him. Chutz mimesis, with the exception of the prohibition, with the exception of inciting him to do idolatry. If the father is Rahman on a mesis, then you're allowed to, then the son, even the son can strike him because it says, do not have compassion upon him and do not have mercy upon him. Gemara says, if somebody strikes his father and his mother, if a person strikes his father and mother, he's not going to be liable unless he makes a wound upon them. This is the stringency of cursing over hitting. That one who curses their father after their death is liable. This is a stringency of cursing over striking, that one who curses their father after death is liable, whereas one who strikes their father after death is going to be exempt. Tana Rabbanan, Avavi Imo Kilel. So it says in the pasuk, we basically want to know that what's the source of the idea that if you curse your father after his death, that you're going to be liable, because it says in the Brisa, Avavi Imo Kilel. It says in the pasuk repeats the words that you cursed your father, because it says ki ish asher yikalelos avivesimo. It says in Vayikra, in Parashas Kedoshim, it says anybody who curses his father or his mother, most you must, he shall be put to death avivimo kilel, because his father and his mother he cursed damav bo, his blood is upon him. So we see from here avivimo kilel is extra. And so it's coming to teach us la'achar misa that you're liable if you curse them after death. Sheyachol, because you might have thought, v'chayav b'makeh, v'chayav b'makal. Since you're liable for lashes and you're liable for cursing, ma'makeh eino chayav el michayim. Just like striking somebody, you're only liable while he's alive. Afa makal eino mechayav el michayim. You might think that if somebody curses somebody, he's only liable while he's alive. V'od, Kal v'chomer, and there's in addition, there's a logical argument. Mamak has asabo shelo ba'amcha k'ba'amcha lo chayv bo la'acharmisa. Just like if you strike somebody, that the Torah says that if you strike somebody, the Torah makes about him shelo ba'amcha k'ba'amcha, meaning to say, we'll read the Rashi here, but when it comes to striking him, the Gabe Akah, when it comes to striking him, we don't have the limitation that you're only not allowed to curse somebody who's a righteous person. Because it doesn't say ba'amcha. So this comes to exclude somebody who is not doing the actions of your people. So, meaning to say, by cursing, good morning, Jeff. We're on 85B. So by cursing, we're asking the question, Jeff, why is it that the prohibition of cursing applies after death but not striking or to one's father? And so the Gemara's first answer was, that it's based upon a verse. And you might have said that it doesn't apply because it's like striking a person, which only applies while you're alive, but cursing should also only apply while you're alive. And we say, no, that's not the case because we have this verse. And second of all, there's a logical argument. Just like striking Just like striking, where we say that you're liable, even though he's not a tzaddik, you're not allowed to strike him. And in that case, you're still not liable after death for it. Mikalo, but a case of cursing, but a case of cursing, that we don't say that it only applies to somebody who's a good. We say it only applies to somebody who's a good person, but if he's a bad person, you're allowed to curse him. So therefore, so for sure, it should not apply after death. So for this reason, we need the verse. So the Gemara says, okay, so we're learning out the fact that you're not allowed to curse your father after death from Avivi Mokiel. But Hanicha, Rabbi Yonasan, the Gemara says, but there's going to be a brisa which says, how do we interpret this verse? And in this brisa, the words Avivi Mokiel are extra for Rabbi Yonasan. The Miyatar Leikra Avivi Imo. So he has these extra words of Avivi Imo to teach us this idea that you can curse your father after death. El Rabbi Oshaya Ma'iko Amemar. According to Rabbi Oshaya, what does it mean? How do we know this idea? Now what's the price? At the Tanya, it says in the pasuk, Ish, it says a man who will curse his father and his mother. Matam Omer Ish. Why does it repeat Ish? L'Ravos Patumtum Vadroganis. That comes to include a person who is like on the spectrum of gender, a tumtum and androgynous. Asher Yikalel Asaviv V'imo, who will curse his father and mother. How do I know, even if you just curse one of them, that you don't have to curse both of them? Which means Aviv Kilel V'imo Kilel. So Rabbi Yeshaya uses those words Aviv V'imo Kilel to tell us that you're liable even for one of them. And it's not extra to teach us that it applies even after death. So Rabbi Yonasan Omer Mashma Shnein Ke'echad Mashma Echad Ve'echad B'fnei Atzmo. So according to Rabbi Yonasan, no, the Torah means either one, unless the Torah would specify together. So if that's the case, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yonasan, how does he know this idea that cursing implies after death? So the Gemara says he has another pasuk. We learned that from the pasuk in Mishpatim that one who curses their father shall be put to death, which is extra. So it's a teacher that applies even after death. So what does Rabbi Yeshaya do with that? He says that's a teacher Rabos Bas Tumtum Vandrogonus. He says that's to teach us the idea a daughter who curses the tumtum and androgynous is also it teaches a daughter and also a tumtum and androgynous. You're also responsible. But why doesn't he learn that out? Well, but I thought we said he was learning that out from the first pasuk of Meishish, but typically Meishvish. No, we don't learn anything out from that because he just says different Torah Kosham Adam. That's just the normal way the Torah is speaking. The Torah speaks sometimes with language that's imprecise because it's the normal way in which people speak. Gemara says, "V'listening chomer b'makeh mibekawel shamaka asabo shelo ba'amcha k'ba'amcha masha enkim b'mekawel." So we learned in the Mishnah the stringency of one who curses over one who strikes, that it applies even after your death. That you're not allowed to curse your father after your death. But why doesn't the Mishnah also say a stringency of hitting over cursing? What's a stringency of hitting over cursing? A hitting over cursing is that you're not allowed to hit even a wicked person. But the cursing, you're allowed to curse a wicked person. So why don't we learn that out? So Gemara says no. No, it must be that the author of our Mishnah, as we compare Hakah to Kloa, to say that you're actually allowed to strike a person who's wicked. So Lema Hani Tanai. So do you want to say that this dispute about whether or not you're allowed to strike a person who's wicked is and whether or not we compare Hakah to Kloa, the author of our Mishnah says we do, whereas the author of the Brisa said we don't. Let's say that it's similar to a different Machokas Tanaim. Lema Hani Tanai. The Tani, here's the Tanicha, the one Brisa says Kusi. Now, Kusi, we'll see what it is, but sometimes in the Talmud it refers to a non-Jew, sometimes it refers to a person to a group of people who had a bad conversion. So we learn kusi atamitzuva koso v'atamitzuva kolaso. So a kusi, you're not allowed to strike him, but you are allowed to curse him. So that brisa does not compare the two. The Tanyida, of course, another brisa says, whereas another brisa says you're not commanded not to strike him and not to kill him. Now, Savrua, kusim geri emesin. So the Gemara's assumption is that everybody's in the position that kusim are legitimate converts, and and therefore they're just wicked. They converted and now they're wicked. And what's the reason of the dispute? The one who says that you're allowed to curse and hit them says we compare cursing to striking. Whereas the other one says we don't compare it. Umar says no, it's not the same dispute. Everybody would agree with the author of the Brisa that we don't compare striking to hitting. What's the argument here? The question is whether they're Jewish or not. One says that they're Geri Arayas, and so therefore they're like actual idolatry. And so therefore you're exempt for cursing them and not for striking them. And therefore you're allowed to strike them. So I don't know why you're not allowed to curse them there. Let's see what. Oh, that's why it says you're not commanded not to curse or strike them because they're Geri Arayas. They're not real converts. Well, I know the Katana have a Shoro Israel. But what about the fact if you want to say that they're not Jewish? What about the next clause that says their oxen are treated like the ox of a Jew? So El Shmamina Bakesha Pligli Shmamina. So Gemara says, okay, we have to revert to their initial assumption that this is indeed the same dispute, whether or not we compare striking to hitting. Okay, so now we're up to the next Mishnah, which is about kidnapping. Agonev nefesh mi Yisrael, that's somebody who steals somebody from the Jewish people, he kidnaps. He's only liable, he's not liable until he brings him into his domain. So when are you liable for kidnapping? When you bring him into your domain. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, you have to bring him into your domain and then actually put him to work. As it states, Vis Amer Bo, as it states in the verse that you use him and then you sell him. Vis Amer Bo Umecharo. You use him and then you sell him. Rashi says, what does it mean until you bring him into his domain? He has to be in your possession. It has to be in your domain. Let's say somebody steals one's own son. Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan, says he's liable. Chum says exempt. We knew this case was coming. Somebody steals a person who's half slave and half free. Rabbi Yehuda says you're liable. Chum say you're exempt. So first of all, Tanakama will buy you. Or it says Tanakama is liable. Says you're liable for kidnapping. Once you bring him into domain, does he not require service? They both require service, but the Tanakama says even less than a penny's worth, whereas Rabbi Yehuda requires a penny's worth. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, Ganvo Mecharo Yashan Mao. Let's say you stole him and you sold him while he was still sleeping. We'll see what the question is. So next question. Machar Isha Ubra. Let's say you sold a woman for a fetus. Rashi says you stole the woman who was pregnant and you sold her for the fetus. That you didn't sell the woman herself, but you say that the fetus is sold. So, Mao, yesh derech imor bakach or ein derech imor bakach? Is this considered a manner of service or not? So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Typically, there's no service at all. What service are you doing while you're sleeping? Or what service is she doing while she's pregnant? Mar says no. No, he's lying on the guy while he's sleeping, so he's using him as a prop. Or Isha de Ukma Ba'ape Zika, the woman, she has some substantial bulk because she's pregnant, so you want to use her to shield the wind from you. So do we say that's derech imar bakach or ein derech imar bakach? Is that considered use or not? So teiko. Dan Rabbanan ki mata ish gonev nefesh me'achav. Somebody who steals somebody from his brothers. How do we know if a woman steals, she's liable to Amalur? Vigonev ish. Ish gonna bain isha or bain ish. I don't know if it's a man who steals a woman or a man. How do I know isha shaganva ish and isha shaganva isha minayin? How do we know a woman who steals a man or a woman who steals also another woman? Tamalum or mesa ganafahu, which means makom regardless. One more brayso. Kimatza ish gonim nefesh me'achav. A man steals a soul from his brother. One who steals a man and a woman. If he steals a man or a woman or a convert or a freed slave in all these cases, or a minor, he's going to be liable. So this is today's daf. We'll stop here. God willing, pick this up tonight.